Hello. So back today. Today I want to talk about aging. My name is Deborah Heiser. I'm an applied developmental psychologist, and I have been working in the field of aging since the 1990s. So I started in the field of aging because my grandmother became depressed in the early 1990s, and I didn't know what that was. So when I went down to visit her, and she wasn't herself, she was like the fun grandma that everybody borrowed her clothes and wore her shoes. You just go down to visit her and you didn't need to take anything. Well, when we visited her, she wasn't herself. And I asked the people at the independent living where she lived, what's wrong with grandma? And they said she's depressed. She took a new medication for her COPD, which was for her breathing, and she can't, so she's feeling depressed. We're going to change her meds and she'll be fine by the next time you visit. So when I went and visited her the next time, she was fine. She was back to herself. So I realized that I wanted to be a grandma fixer. I wanted to work with older adults and I wanted to study and research depression and the aging population. And that's what I did. I changed my major in college, went back to school, took the long road that most people don't like to take, and went back for psychology. And then I worked in a psychiatric hospital doing research on depression with the elderly for a while, and then started my doctorate and continued my work. And then I became a researcher after I graduated and looked at all the things no one ever wants to have or get with regard to aging. So I started out like that. I remained a researcher. I did a lot of research on depression, frailty, all of those kinds of things. And then I pivoted a few years later because someone said to me, "What do we have to look forward to as we get older? Is it just the bad stuff?" And I didn't have an answer for him. So I was embarrassed that I didn't have an answer and decided to go look at everything that we have to look forward to. And there's a lot. So I'm always excited to be able to talk about aging and some of our fears and misconceptions that we have with aging because there really is a lot that we have to look forward to. We really just look at aging for the most part as something scary because we're looking at it as something that is completely biological, and really it's a narrative that we've been told, that we tell ourselves, and that's what makes it so scary. So, um, when people think about aging, they don't imagine wisdom and clarity or freedom. They imagine loss. And when I talk to people over and over again about this, they always come up with loss, with, as in cognition, loss in their physical abilities, loss of people around them. And that's scary to us. That's something that, most of us don't want to think about. So we live in a culture that treats aging as 100% decline, as just a series of losses that we have to look forward to. And that is not just, you know, one thing that we have to look forward to. It's also like the financial, instability that we think that we might have. So when we think of finances, most people say, "Oh my gosh, I may never be able to have enough to live on." And so that's scary too. So we think about all of these things, the fears that we face, the things that make us feel like we don't have what we need for growing older, and this is what scares us. So aging really, the fear for it spikes, not because we're having any of these feelings or experiencing it, but because society is what is really teaching us to value, and, thinking about aging as not being something that we want to look forward to. So let's dismantle some of the fears that we have about aging in this right here. Um, Not to minimize any of them, but to understand why they exist and what actually happens across the lifespan. So, This is not a motivational talk. This is really a psychological reality. And this comes from me being in the field for years, looking at it from both sides of the coin, the things that we don't want to get and the things that we don't look forward to, as well as the things that we really look forward to and want to have, but we're afraid we might miss out on them. So, let's start with, human beings are uniquely aware of time. We celebrate our birthdays every year. We mark how old we are. We look at time and we celebrate time. Time is something that we're always thinking about. So let's start with that because we don't just age. We don't just grow a year older. We anticipate more years growing older. So imagine when you were a kid and you thought, wow, if only, as a 10-year-old, if only I was 18 and had all the freedoms of life. And then when you hit, your 20s, you think, oh, okay, I'm in my prime. But in your 30s, you might think, I wish I had 10 years back. We're always thinking about age in terms of where we would like to be in terms of our age. And at some point, we start to think our time will run out. So any of that anticipation activates anxiety. It activates catastrophic thinking. Will I have money? Will I be someone who suffers from some kind of a decline? Will I be somebody who suffers from Alzheimer's disease? Hey, thanks for joining. This is about the common fears of aging. So when we think of this and the catastrophic thinking, we end up also having all kinds of loss aversion. And that is feeling like I do not want to lose anything. I'm afraid that I'm going to lose the things that I currently have. And this is something that, really makes a lot of people feel really afraid. This is part of the anticipation and what it activates for us. So research shows that fear of aging itself increases anxiety, makes us feel much more anxious. It makes us vulnerable to scams. It makes us think of our body in a way that makes us feel distress. And it can cause or be associated with social withdrawal, people not going out as much. So fear does not protect us from aging. Fear accelerates the suffering that we feel with regard to anticipating age. So hold on, I see a comment here. Okay, hold on. I'm just going to get rid of somebody here in the chat. All right. There we go. So I'm going to just check on here for a second, just a minute. Hi to everybody who has joined on YouTube. It's good to see you here. Okay, so I'm going to continue on. So basically, when we think of all of this, it gives us, it really doesn't help us, this anxiety that we have. So the first thing that we really feel is the fear of losing independence. When I talk to the college students that I teach, one of the things that they talk about is, oh my goodness, I'm going to need a walker. Oh my goodness, I'm going to become frail and I won't be able to do things. I won't be as independent as I am now. I don't want to need help. I don't want to be a burden. These are the things that people talk about. But psychologically, this fear is not about help. It's about control and identity. So really what we're fearing is the loss of control and that we won't have any control over certain things. So we equate independence, the feeling of being independent, with worth. And this is something that we don't really talk about. We just add that as a fear component. So across adulthood, interdependence increases well-being, not dependence. So older adults who ask for help earlier do better. Older adults who build reciprocal support systems do better. Older adults who adapt rather than resist do better. So they end up maintaining more autonomy, not less. So we have a fear of losing control, but we also have a fear of asking for help or support or for talking about things. So this is one of the things that makes it very difficult for us. So the irony is that the people most terrified of losing any kind of independence often lose it faster because they wait too long to adapt. So that fear that we have about losing any of our independence is something that we should think of. How can I maintain my independence? How can I do this with the support and help of others? So it's as simple as, I remember hitting midlife and needing glasses. We go out and we get them. We use what's needed. We talk with others, and we're able to maintain our independence at many levels. So the next fear number 2, is deteriorating health. When I talk to individuals, they always talk about deteriorating health as being a big fear factor for them. So illness increases with age. We know that. But here's what people misunderstand, that health is not a straight downward slope. So it isn't like you hit a certain age and then all of a sudden your health completely declines. So a lot of the decline is preventable. A lot can be delayed. A lot can be managed. So, if we're thinking about our health and deteriorating health, you can have all kinds of things that you can do to help to have longer health, right? And a lot of it is what we know: exercise, socialize more, seek medical care. If we do these things, they help us. But a lot of people get afraid, and so they don't do these things. They don't want to go to the doctor because they don't want to hear what the doctor might say. The doctor might say something scary. The doctor might tell us that we have something that we're afraid that we're going to get. But most things are treatable, especially if you go early. And so this is something that, we're able to really take care of. Hold on a second. I just need to go in. A happy birthday to the birthday person. That's exciting. I hope you're having a good day. So, hold on, I've got a bunch of messages here. And hi to everybody who's joining. So if we look at these, we can recover faster if we go earlier. We can experience less distress. We can live longer. So really, if we look at aging and the fear of deteriorating health, we have a lot more control over that than we really understand. Most of us think we don't have any control, or that we are afraid to find out if there is anything that might be wrong with us. But really, if you go, you're able to usually get things taken care of, address them, get them, cured, get them fixed, whatever the deal is. So you might also find that you have an underlying condition that you didn't know about. And once you start to get care for it, you're going to be fine. So there's this saying that, you can live with a health issue and live to be much older than a person who doesn't know that they have a health issue, and then they end up dying earlier from that health issue. So the next fear number 3, is loneliness. A lot of people think, I'm going to be alone. No one's going to come around. And that is just a part of aging. So loneliness is real. There is an epidemic for loneliness, and it's dangerous. It has all kinds of, it's not just that you feel lonely. It has a lot of health implications that are associated with it. So, but loneliness is not inevitable. It's really, the thing that shrinks is not our social capacity. It's that we don't go and try to socialize. We start to shrink away from socializing. So that's what really happens. So as people age, they drop any of their superficial relationships. They tend to keep emotionally meaningful ones, and they stop overextending. So that's a good thing. That we aren't just engaged in superficial relationships and things like that. But if we don't really protect our meaningful relationships, the people that matter to us, if we're not constantly reaching out, if we're not trying to keep building new meaningful relationships, then that can turn into a sort of an isolation where we're not going out as much, where we're not doing as much, where we're not engaged with as many people. And that's a slippery slope. And we fall down that path. And that really ends up becoming a danger when we stop initiating connection. So this is something that people fear, is that they won't have connections. They won't know how to get connections. They'll be alone. So we do have control over that. That is something that, as long as we're engaged in activities in the community, if it can even be that, easy things to start. You text people that you care about and you say, "Hey, how are you? Just checking in on you." You do things like have meetups whenever you can for a cup of coffee, something easy. Even Zoom is good. Just keeping those relationships going. Thank you for the likes. I appreciate you. Just keeping those going really helps, because you do not need quantity to not feel lonely. You need quality. So, in order to not feel lonely, you need to know that people care about you. You need to feel that you care about others. You need to be thinking about other people and thinking about, when am I going to see or talk to them again? Those kinds of things. Those are the things that we can start at an early age protecting. And that makes us have a much easier time when we are getting older, because we're really protecting ourselves from loneliness. So, um, the next fear is financial insecurity. And this one, oh my goodness. If you look up legacy, if you look up aging, finances come up right away. And this is so scary for people, because there is a rational component to this. But the anxiety here comes from the uncertainty, not the numbers. If somebody said you have to have X number to live financially secure, that could make you feel a lot better. But then you could say, oh, is the market going to change? Am I going to lose money? Does the value of my house go up or down? Will I be able to live where I'm living? There's so much involved that makes us feel that we don't have control over it, that can make it feel really threatening for us. So our, financial fear increases when we avoid to plan. So planning is so scary for so many people that they just don't plan. And then they feel scared because they didn't plan. I get it. It's scary. But planning is something that can help you to feel like you're in control. There are financial advisors. There are people at the banks that can help you with all of this. And this is something that the main thing with fear is you want to feel a sense of control. So if you can feel that you have a sense of control over your finances, it's going to help. This could be even, somebody says, hey, you need more money than you have right now. Well, there are a lot of things that people are doing about that nowadays. They're saying to themselves, I'm not going to retire. I'm always going to keep a part-time little side hustle, something I can do for my house, or something that I enjoy that I didn't do before, something that'll bring money in. I'm going to do a little something that, maybe brings in a little bit of extra health insurance or dental or vision or whatever. People are talking about that. That gives that sense of control that so many people want and need, that reduces that fear of financial insecurity. So one of the biggest things when we feel like we are afraid of talking about our finances is that we delay our conversations about it. We don't even talk to our loved ones about it. We don't talk to anybody about it because we think that conversation is going to open up a can of worms, or I'm going to be so uncomfortable because of it. But you can start with a conversation with someone at your bank. You can talk with somebody, have an initial conversation with a financial planner. You can go online and do searches. You can do what you want that makes you feel most comfortable. Go on ChatGPT or one of those and just plug in some information and start to ask there, but start somewhere. The other thing that gives us a big fear is that the future feels abstract. We don't know our future. That's part of life, is that you're never sure of what is to come. And when we feel that way, that makes it hard for us to feel secure in our finances because we can say, what if I lose my job? What if my house value goes down? What if my stocks decline? What if, right? So that future feels abstract. We don't know how we're going to be. So that makes us feel fearful. So if you can name some realistic scenarios, that is helpful. If you can even make partial plans, that is helpful. If you can look at different scenarios that could come up where you could say, this will help me if I'm in a sticky situation. You say, you know what? I know that if things got really bad, I could sell my house and I could live, in an apartment for less. Or I can always work a little bit. I can do some kind of part-time work. Accept some of the trade-offs. Don't say to yourself, it's all or nothing, because that makes it harder. So just by doing some of those simple things, that gives us a sense of control that allows us to reduce that fear that we might be having. Hey, thanks for coming on. Thank you. I appreciate you. So when we have control, this reduces anxiety, even when our resources are limited. So you might have limited resources, but that does not mean that you can't live in retirement or old age very comfortably. So just get control over what you can, and that is going to be what makes you feel okay. It's going to reduce that fear that you have. And when you come up with even a partial plan or a small plan, it allows you to build on that later when you have a little bit more headspace to start to tackle some of that. So another fear is the fear of death. So this one's always a hard conversation for people to have because death is inevitable. No one lives forever. But this is something that people fear. So this is the quiet fear. It's underneath all of the others. This is the one that, people feel and think about all the time, but they're not going to really talk about it or think about it for themselves, even if they can avoid doing that. So most people don't fear the death itself. They fear pain, loss of dignity, an unfinished life. I can tell you that I worked with older adults, especially older adults nearing the end of their life for many years. And what all of them said to me, no one at all said, I wish that I had more stuff. I wish that I had nicer things. I wish that I had more things. Not a single solitary one of them said that. They didn't even care about what they had. The things that mattered to them were that they did the things that they wanted to do and that they had contact with the people that they loved. That was really it. They wanted to feel like their life mattered for something, that they were here on earth, and that their being here mattered. So that's really it. So if you think about that, I didn't ever talk to anybody who was afraid of pain. I didn't thankfully talk to people where they lived in this particular nursing care facility. Everyone felt dignity, which was nice. So they didn't have that fear. But prior to, if you're in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you might feel that because you're not sure about what it is. Hello, good to see you here. So that is something that, a lot of people fear. Psychologically, fear of death decreases when people experience any kind of purpose. If you are doing something that matters to you, that fear of death declines. If you feel like you're contributing to the world, your fear of death decreases significantly. if you're engaged in what is called generativity, where you are caring for others without expecting anything in return, that is, when you're doing things like mentoring, volunteering, engaged in philanthropy, helping the next generation in some way, then the fear of death decreases tremendously. So we know that when we're involved with others, when we're communicating, when we're doing some of these things that really matter to us, that make us feel like we matter, we aren't afraid of our future as much. So, all of this is really, part of the psychology of aging and how we look at aging. So, fear can often backfire, especially when we're thinking about aging. So, the fear of aging, again, it increases anxiety. It increases our feelings of vulnerability. It increases us self-isolating. It really does increase any of the decline that we're fearing. So it's so important to realize that if we can look at aging in a way that is one where we want to look at ourselves as active participants in the world, that we are mattering to others, that others matter to us, that we contribute, that what we say and do means something in the world, that we have a footprint, all of that ends up helping us. So aging is not the enemy. Avoiding thinking about it is the enemy. So let's see, I have a question here. I can't answer that. I'm talking about aging right here, but I wish I had an answer for that. So, if we think really about the psychological shift when we're talking about aging, aging is not about the loss of youth. It's about a change in our priorities. So think about that. It is not about the loss of youth. It is about a change in priorities. So as people age, emotional regulation improves. Think of yourself or think of a 2-year-old. I always, tell the students in my classes, imagine yourself when you were 2 and you didn't get what you wanted. How did you solve that problem? Did you throw a tantrum? Did you cry? Did you do something? Did you, reach out and grab for something that you wanted? We don't do that as we get older because we have all kinds of coping skills in place. Our emotional regulation is constantly improving with age. And so that allows us to feel better in situations where we're not getting exactly what we want. Our perspective deepens, meaning becomes clearer. So when you're a 2-year-old, meaning is how do I get what I want when I want it? And when you're older, it's how do I make meaning of the situation I'm in, whether it's the one I want to be in or not. And that's really one of the big differences. So the problem isn't aging. The problem is being taught to fear a stage of life that we have not been shown how to inhabit. Nobody really knows how they're going to be in older adulthood. They just see, examples of people being, in undignified positions or feeling lonely or, having some kind of a negative aspect of their life. So, one of the most important things to remember is that you're not alone. And you can start working on this as early as you want, to maintain and build connections. And that you don't age out of your value. As we get older, we don't lose our value. That is a myth. That is something that is just not true. And one of the things that I always tell people is look at actions, not words. So we hear a lot about how we don't value age, but if you look around, you can see that people in this country and in other countries are being, voted into office, nearing 80 and at 80 and older than 80 all over the world and in the United States. The worth and value of age does not decline. We see people starting companies at older ages. We see people engaging in, real life issues and doing all kinds of very important work at 80 and older. So even though people are talking about age as a negative thing, our actions are that we are really valuing people of older age. So um, really what we want to think about when we're thinking about aging is that this aging is not just a physical thing that we go through. Our physical trajectory is something that looks very scary. It's a steep incline. We, learn to walk, talk, we can run fast, do all this stuff. And then we hit a peak pretty early in life. And then we hit a decline that goes down. And that's a slow but steady decline. And that's what scares people because we think that that's all there is to it. But I'll also tell you that even if that is the case, right? I remember I need reading glasses now, right? I need to wear glasses. Big deal. Who cares? I always tell my students, you can run faster than me, but I'm happier than you. And I tell them that because research shows that as we get older, at the same point that we start with our physical trajectory, we start with our emotional trajectory. And that goes up and it never declines. So you can expect to be happier. So we should be thinking of our lifespan as a psychological trajectory, not just a physical trajectory. Because when we have children and they're born, we don't say, "Oh, I hope your baby can run real fast when they get older." We say, "I hope you have your baby has a happy, healthy life," right? We are always putting happiness and our emotional desires on the future of our children and ourselves, but we forget it along the way. So hold on, I have a question here. Why do older people repeat things so many times? I don't, it could be that somebody, you mean if they're repeating a phrase over and over again? I'm not sure what you're referring to. If you can tell me what you mean by that, like give me an example, then I could probably help you. I can tell you, I always tell all of my students, I can't multitask. I'll forget one thing I'm doing. Like when I have to log into the computer to go to the computer screen, I always have to tell them, remember, I can't hold two thoughts at once. That is a normal part of aging. Also, you can forget names. Like around 50, you start to, name names and things like that can elude us, but who cares really? I mean, I need glasses now. I remember in my 40s, I needed to put on glasses. I can do things much more efficiently than younger people because I've been doing them for a long time, but I forget all the students' names, until at least a few weeks into the semester. I never would have done that when I'm younger, but honestly, does that matter? Not really. So it's just, a part of life that if you were to say, oh, that's going to happen when, I was 20, I might have thought, oh my gosh, that's terrible, but it's not. It really isn't. Hey, from Chicago. Good to see you here. So when we're thinking of aging, it is a psychological trajectory. It's one that, and I did a TEDx talk on this where I talk about age and so you can find it. It's called Rethinking Aging, Mentoring in a New Generation. That's something that I've been talking about for a long, long time. I have worked in the field with older adults, researched, both the good and the, negative things that we look forward to as we age. And I can tell you that when I have worked with people, we often think that because they're not working or they're not doing some of the things that they were doing, that they're feeling a loss, and people aren't. Hey, from Honduras, good to see you. Nice to see you here. So aging is something that happens. It's not something to fear. It's something to embrace the things that you can look forward to. You can look forward to getting wiser. You can look forward to, oh, cool. Nice. You can look forward to getting wiser. You can look at getting more efficient at things. You can look at having deep, meaningful connections with people. You can look at knowing that you will have done something that matters in the world. You will be able to know as you age um, that your life is all about what you want to make of it. And that never goes away. It's not like you age out of having that. You always have passions, you always have purpose up until your last breath. So none of that wanes. I used to think as a kid that, well, why is anybody bothering if they're older? They must, they've done everything they could do. I remember being 10 and thinking, wow, why would they even possibly want to go do things? They've already lived their life. And, it wasn't until I became in my 20s and I started to really look and research aging that I started to understand that our development does not end at puberty or early adulthood. It continues all the way into our very last breath. So I hope all of this has been helpful today to anybody who has had fears of aging. I hope that you do not have fears of aging, that you embrace aging, and that you feel good about everything that you're doing to live a long, healthy, happy life. At any age that you are, you can be 10 and looking forward to your future. You can be 79 and looking forward to your future. It doesn't matter your age. Anyway, have a great day. I hope that you're having a great holiday season as well. Take care.